Hey, it's Amy Newmark. I'm off this week because I'm finishing up our books that are coming out for the Christmas season. So this week, we are rerunning the 4th week of the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast from back when we started and we didn't have as many listeners. Chances are you haven't heard these episodes yet, so I think you're going to enjoy them.
Changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Thoughtful Thursday, and I get to share some of my favorite stories with you. These are stories that appealed to me personally and changed my own life. And I think they can change yours too, and that's why it's fun to do this podcast and share these stories. You know, I work really hard on these books, and I always wish that even more people could read these stories. So by doing this podcast, at least I get to share some of these stories that I'm so passionate about. And today's story is one that I am extremely passionate about. It's had a huge impact on me, and I think it really gives us perspective. It also happens to be one of Chicken Soup for the Soul's single most popular stories out of the more than 20,000 stories that we've published. And it comes from the very first, the original Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Now, we republished that book in 2013 for our 20th anniversary. So that's where you'll find this story today, in the Chicken Soup for the Soul 20th anniversary edition. The story is called One at a Time. And it is one of those urban legend kind of stories that probably never actually happened, but I just love it anyway. The story came from Chicken Soup for the Soul's founders, Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, and it's short, so I'm just going to read it to you. So here we go. A friend of ours was walking down a deserted Mexican beach at sunset. As he walked along, he began to see another man in the distance. As he grew nearer, he noticed that the man kept leaning down, picking something up and throwing it out into the water. Time and again, he kept hurling things out into the ocean. As our friend approached even closer, he noticed that the man was picking up starfish that had been washed up on the beach, and one at a time, he was throwing them back into the water. Our friend was puzzled. He approached the man and said, "Good evening, friend. I was wondering what you are doing." And the man replied, "I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean. You see, it's low tide right now, and all of these starfish have been washed up onto the shore. If I don't throw them back into the sea, they'll die up here from lack of oxygen." "I understand," my friend replied, "but there must be thousands of starfish on this beach. You can't possibly get to all of them. There are simply too many. And don't you realize this is probably happening on hundreds of beaches all up and down this coast? Can't you see that you can't possibly make a difference?" The man smiled, bent down, and picked up yet another starfish. And as he threw it back into the sea, he replied, "Made a difference to that one." All right, I have 2 things to say. First of all, I know that starfish are technically called sea stars today, but let's just keep calling them starfish for now since we all know what we're talking about. And 2, isn't that a great story? Every little thing we do really does make a difference, and it is totally worth it. There's a wonderful quote from Mother Teresa, and I know it may or may not be accurate since there are about 1,000 quotes attributed to Mother Teresa, but this one is a good one. We ourselves feel that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be less because of that missing drop. So that was your Thoughtful Thursday story, the kind of story that changes our perspective and gives us something to think about. And this starfish story does it for me, and I hope that you love it as much as I do. Tomorrow's podcast is what I call Friend Friday, when I bring on someone interesting for you to meet. And tomorrow we're going to talk to Jody Fuller, who makes a difference every day to a group of people who share the same speech impediment that he does. Jody did 3 tours of duty in Iraq and is now in the Army Reserves. He's a writer who we've published many times, a comedian, and a motivational speaker. And he does all of this with a stutter. I'm Amy Newmark. Thanks for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. I'd be grateful if you would help me spread the word about it by telling your friends. And if you'd like to read more thought-provoking, life-changing stories from the book I mentioned today, the original Chicken Soup for the Soul 20th Anniversary Edition. Please go to our website, chickensoup.com.